Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zarna, and I'm country manager for London South Bank University, taking care of India. Welcome to LSU MSM Agent E-Training 2020 Live. I will be your moderator for today's webinar, and I would like to thank you all for taking out time for being here today with us. In today's webinar, we're going to discuss about At the end of the presentation, we will have plenty of time for question and answer, as we understand all of you must have so many queries. This session is going to be taken by Lee Rowland. Most of you already know him. Lee is our international officer based in London office for South Asia, West Africa, and UK. The instruction about this webinar platform, the Zoom platform, will be posted in the chat box, and you can write your questions in the Q&A section in your control panel. So without further ado, let's start with the presentation. So over to you, Lee.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Anna, and thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope you're well and keeping safe. I feel like I have to say that a lot every time I have a meeting now. It's always keep safe. So yeah, hope you're well. Apologies if you can hear the sound. A delivery man's just appeared and my dogs are barking, but it's ended now. There we go. So yeah, first of all, just want to kind of give you a bit of an update on where we are currently at LSBU. So we're still issuing CAS letters. I know that there have been some issues this intake with kind of the CAS team getting back to agents and applicants very quickly. Just to give you an example, I forwarded an email to the CAS team yesterday, and then I went straight into the CAS inbox, which I do have access to, and 10 emails were already in above the one that I had literally just sent. So they're getting an extortionate number of emails, and they are working incredibly hard to get stuff through. I am also working kind of temporarily as part of the CAS team, looking through bank statements and bank letters and that kind of thing. So we're hoping to get some momentum still going on that. So do bear with us, and apologies for any delays that you guys are facing. What we were doing just before lockdown is looking at a brand new system internally that would allow us to kind of store documents in a much more, I would say, efficient process or efficient manner, and hopefully, as soon as this kind of intake is done, we can focus on doing that. So you may not see any changes kind of externally, but internally there'll be a big change for us. So hopefully, you'll start to see things moving quicker. What I'd like to do actually for this particular presentation is talk about the application and pre-CAS process itself, just so that you guys have some clarity around some of the kind of what we ask for and what we expect, and then any questions you have at the end we can deal with. This presentation won't be very long because I think it's all relatively straightforward once you get to know it. The pre-CAS process is something that really confused me when I first started at LSBU, but now that having kind of experienced it a couple of times, it's actually once you know what documents to submit, it's actually quite simple. So without further ado, I will just, so how to apply. The first things first, completed application forms and documents are to be sent to apps.india@lsbu.ac.uk. So that would be our lovely admissions coordinator, Guinea, will be taking all of the documents and the application forms and making sure they're correct. Some of you may be aware that we do have an application system online on our website. What we do ask that applications from India are submitted through the India team, just because otherwise our admissions team would be spending a huge amount of time filtering a large number of applications. And just having that barrier there of Guinea, it means that when an application is submitted directly to London, we know it's generally good for an offer. So that's why we have the India team in place. Also, for those of you who work with our foundation provider, so we work with On Campus London, which is part of the Cambridge Education Group, we have no involvement with the foundation applications. So the email address is there for applications to their programs. In terms of admissions and commission for On Campus, like I said, we have absolutely no involvement in that. But obviously, if you do want to work with them and you don't currently, do let me know, because it's quite easy to set up a relationship that way. So the documents that are required, as well as the completed application form, which, Zana, am I right in thinking we'll have a brand new application form for the January intake?
Oh yes, there were some couple of issues that two, three of our agents identified, but then we have revised them, and now we will be able to send out the updated version of application form to everybody. That is
Okay,
going to be much simpler and much easier, actually.
Yeah, the current application form is it's not our favourite thing, but the new one is much simpler to use. So you send in the completed application form, the qualifications, the English language proficiency, personal statement or SOP, immigration information. You only really need to send this if the applicant has previously studied in the UK or has a visa refusal for somewhere, such as, if they tried to study in Canada before or America and they received a refusal. It generally doesn't affect the application that much. The only time it perhaps might, if it's from another country such as USA or Canada, is if, an applicant has used fraudulent documents or something like that, then obviously we may consider not taking the application any further. But if it's based on credibility or finances, we will still take the application forward and consider it. Obviously, a copy of the passport, references, and CV. Obviously, in COVID times, we are being a bit more flexible with references because we understand that some businesses aren't necessarily as fully open as they used to be. Same with universities. So at the moment, we are foregoing references. And I'm not sure if that's something that's going to continue or how long that's going to continue for. But if you are able to get references for the applicant or the applicant is able to secure them themselves, that's great. Do upload them. If they can't, then do let us know that that's an issue, and we'll flag that with our admissions team in London, just so they're aware that you're struggling to get those. A CV will be required. Now, some courses do ask for it, such as it's not running this September, but our MBA in International Management. So that sometimes
introduce the lovely Gini.
They will. So sometimes so for the MBA International Management, we'll ask for a CV. Also, if there's a study gap. Just because we like to see what the applicant has been doing during that time between their previous study and the time they want to come to LSBU. What I would also suggest is it does need to have some sort of a fair amount of detail. So explaining, rather than just the job title and how long they've been there, it's good to know the kind of things that they've been doing as part of that job, and any accolades or anything that they've been able to obtain whilst in that position. In terms of the qualifications, we need official final certificates and complete transcripts, ideally. We can't accept any provisional documents. Again, that's the rule of our admissions team. That's something that they've requested. So ideally, official final certificates and complete transcripts. Should state the applicant's full name, name of the award, awarding body, and date. It's not so much an issue in India, but if it's not in English, then we do need the original and an official translation of the qualification. In terms of with the transcripts, ideally complete transcripts. Obviously, if you have consolidated mark sheets, we do like to see those, but we do like to see the individual transcripts just because consolidated mark sheets do hide the backlogs that we sometimes look for. So in terms of backlogs, you're looking at around a dozen backlogs. If it's more than that, we'd need a very good explanation as to why they're there. But anything underneath, anything below that, then we'll generally accept. And then also any details of current studies. So even if it's something that's not going to affect the student's application, so they're doing a small diploma that we won't base the offer on currently, that's still something that we would like to look at and like to see. So the statement of purpose, I know this has always been a sort of bone of contention for you guys. I know some of you have had kind of issues getting this through our kind of screening process. So we've always talked about that we do check for plagiarism. When I say that we check for plagiarism, we don't have fancy software, we have Google. So what our admissions team in London especially do is they will pick out passages of the text that they think has been copied and paste it into Google. So we don't use fancy plagiarism software. We literally use the biggest search engine in the world, so if we can find that text in a chunk in another, through Google, we know it's been plagiarized. And I know we've had times where people have said, oh no, it definitely hasn't. If we can paste a chunk of it into Google and it appears in another document, which also happens to be a personal statement, then I'm afraid we won't accept it. But just to give you an idea of what we kind of expect in these documents, you're looking at least 500 words, and it should ideally cover essentially why LSBU, why this course, why the student thinks they're suitable for it, and what they want to do in the future, utilizing what they've learned on this course. I know that some universities are forgoing personal statements at the moment or aren't particularly bothered if they're copied or not. For us, this is a really important part of the assessment process, and it must therefore be the student's own work. We aren't interested in the quality of English language. We know that that's something students worry about, that their written English isn't good enough. We accept that there will be mistakes, and we have no issue with that at all. We just want to see that the student is able to write, in coherent English, and that they are able to justify why they want the course and why they want this particular course, why LSBU. So I put in 5 key things that I think are key points that should be covered in the personal statement or SOP. So the applicant background, so where they studied previously, a little bit about them, what they're interested in, that kind of thing, how they perhaps developed a love of the subject they want to study, why this particular course, why the UK and LSBU. They can talk about, if they've researched into Canada and the USA or Australia, but they decided against it, then it's good to know why they decided on the UK instead of those. And also why LSBU, what it is about this university that made them kind of want to apply here. Also career prospects. A lot of the admissions process is always about where the student's been, everything that they've done beforehand. But we also, in the SOP, we want to see a little bit about where they think they're going. So obviously, I know for bachelor's students, this may be a bit difficult, because I know that when I started my bachelor's degree, I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my career. And so I understand that it is a bit difficult for students who still have, 3-4 years of study before heading into the career. But just an idea, even if it's purely aspirational, if they want to be, CEO of a big tech company, then that's fine. Obviously, for master's students, we want something a bit more specific, because you choose a master's degree normally to you've kind of chosen your career, and then you want to specialize a little bit more. So we would expect a bit more detail from a master's student, a particular position that they want, or why they feel, whether it's that they need a promotion and the master's is a way to get there. Also, if there is a study gap, a good nation of that study gap. So what they've been doing in their time since being at LSBU, since applying to LSBU and their previous study. We may ask for more information. You'll know there's the IACPS kind of document that we sometimes send out. If you can explain the gap, or why the student's doing a second master's in the standard SOP, there's no need to send out that extra document. So if you can kind of explain why second masters, if that's the case, why there's a study gap, that kind of thing, why is the subject completely different to anything I've studied before, then that's always really, really helpful, and that actually may save you some time, or the student some time, in the application process. Just some other information. So there are portfolios required for some courses. Obviously, I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs. Things like architecture, film studies, baking science and technology course also ask for a portfolio. Some will also ask for work experience, and obviously some courses do require academic approval. So our admissions team can't make decisions based on portfolios because they're not qualified architects, whereas our architecture academics are, and so that's why we do that. And obviously non-direct entry, so if you're coming into the second year or the third year of a course at bachelor's level, then the academic does need to sign that off. Applicants who don't meet the academic entry criteria, we can consider significant work experience. However, again, the academic needs to approve that, because obviously they know what work experience would go well with the course that the applicant's applying to study. One thing I would also like to kind of highlight is, I know that for the last year or so, turnaround times have been a bit slow, and I do apologize for that. The reason is that we have had some staffing changes within our admissions team, and unfortunately in the UK, when somebody leaves, hiring somebody is never a straightforward process, because you can't just bring in someone temporarily. There's normally gaps of where someone has to work their notice, and then then they leave, then there's a month gap where the new candidate is working their notice at their previous institution and then coming and joining us. So that's kind of why things have been a bit slow this year. What we're also doing, what we're in the process of doing, is implementing a new admissions team based in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. We're still in the piloting phase of this. Hopefully, in the next few months, they'll start to take a much more active role. They do a lot of stuff behind the scenes at the moment, but hopefully, kind of as our UK team goes to sleep or goes home for the day, our KL admissions team will be waking up, because the idea is we want a 24-hour admissions service so that things can move a lot quicker. There's just a couple of teething issues that we're trying to sort out at the moment, but the piloting phase has been really successful. We just need to give them access to a few more of our systems so that they can do a bit more of the kind of back-end stuff, so that they could operate fully independently without us standing over them. So that's a bit of information about the admissions process. I hope that was useful. Obviously, any questions I'll take at the end. Actually, Zana, do you want to quickly run through the application, the entry requirements? Just why not, for old time's sake?
Okay. No problem. Yeah, definitely. So for India, we usually look at 55% overall in your 12th standard if the student is applying for bachelor's degree, and same goes for master's programs. It's like in the student's bachelor's degree. In terms of backlogs, we only accept up to 8 to 9 backlogs. I mean, we have accepted a bit more than that, but then for that, the overall profile has to be really, really good. Like the IELTS is extraordinary and things like that. But then we can consider those kind of profiles on case-to-case basis. In terms of English language criteria, we do accept IELTS, TOEFL, PT, and for this academic year, we are going to accept Duolingo as well. I think for January, we will still be accepting Duolingo. Not so sure about next September, but I think January is still fine. So the IELTS, when you apply for bachelor's degree, 6 overall, not less than 5.5 is the standard criteria. And for master's degree, it is 6.5 overall, not less than 5.5. Now, if the student has completed the 12th standard from CBSE, ICSE, or Maharashtra State Board, in that case, we can waive IELTS if the student has scored, like in 12th standard English, if they have scored 65% or more. Same way, if the student has studied from any state board except Punjab State Board, with 70% in their 12th standard English, we can waive IELTS. For Punjab State Board, students must take IELTS, PT, TOEFL, Duolingo, or any English language test that we accept. We also accept sometimes a bit less percentage. I mean, of course, as I mentioned, we don't have very strict or very rigid admission criteria. If the student is having 53, 54%, but let's say they have studied from NET certified universities like Delhi University, Mumbai University, then we are happy to take a look at the application. Now, in this, it won't be purely, the offer won't be based purely on the academics, but the overall profile. Like, let's say the student has 54%, 53%, but then they have done really good extracurricular activities, maybe. And, or let's say they have been a state player for some sports, things like that, we are happy to take a look. But just keep in mind that the final decision will be of admissions team or of that particular school. Definitely, if the student is having 45%, with extraordinary other extracurricular activities, like I won't say that the chances of getting accepted will be a bit less, because in that case, the gap of the percentages is like very high. 1-2% is fine. But when we say 10-15% less than the admission criteria, not so much. So I can send out more information on the criteria, because this is pretty much the overall. We have specific program criteria as well. For that, I think our website is always up to date. You go to our website, lspu.ac.uk, and then the course finder, select any particular course that the student is interested in, and each and every information is available there, including the entry criteria, what they are going to study in that particular program year-wise. Even they can look at each and every subject of that particular program. So our website is pretty good. I really recommend that whenever you're stuck somewhere and it's the odd timing that you're not able to reach the India team or maybe UK team, look at the website and most of your questions will be answered definitely.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that. I will now move on to LSBU's precast process. So like I said very early on, this is something that kind of it sounds much more complicated than it actually is. And kind of, I'll go through and I'll explain what I mean by that. So first of all, I would this is our current Tier 4 compliance team. So you may have spoken to these guys on and off. They kind of varies who you speak to. So we have Anjali, who is our immigration and compliance manager. She actually joined us during lockdown, so I've never actually met her. We also have Veronique Faber, so Nikki, as she prefers to be known, is our Tier 4 compliance administrator. And then underneath Nikki, we also have Desreen, Aurelie, and Elizabeth. These are our Tier 4 compliance administrators. They're currently here with us temporarily. We're hoping to make them permanent. And their job is to kind of sift through the CAS documents and do interviews and that kind of thing. This year as well, we've also had a helping hand from some student ambassadors who have also been able to do some of the interviews for us. All of your queries regarding CAS-related things goes to cas@lsbu.ac.uk. Like I said, they're getting a huge number of emails. So what I would say is, if you do send an email and you don't hear anything, I would say for 5 days, then reply, because the problem is we have a lot of times where agents email something and then they'll email the next day saying, where is it? And what happens is it actually adds to the conversation and moves the whole email conversation up back to the top of the inbox. And the CAS team work from the bottom up. So if you kind of leave stuff there, it will get seen to. It just does take a bit of time because of the sheer amount of documents we're being sent. However, we are, like I said, we are looking at a system where you can perhaps upload documents to the system yourself, and we can look at them. So hopefully for the next intake, maybe not January, depends on how quickly we can implement it. I think it's good to go. You'll start to see some really, really sort of positive changes in that. So deposits, you need to pay a minimum deposit required for the CAS, which is £3,500. Refunds are only allowed per the refund policy. There's a link for that there. I'll share this presentation later with Zana so that she can send it round. Obviously, with COVID-19 and that kind of stuff and everything that's going on at the moment, we are being a lot more flexible than we used to be with our refunds. So obviously, if a student decides that they don't feel safe coming to the UK and they want to refund or they want to defer, we're being much more flexible and we're obviously accepting that. If the CAS is not issued, we will obviously allow the student to go for a refund, whether that's because of credibility issues or timing issues. We will, of course, send a refund. The only times we won't really is if we believe fraudulent documents have been submitted or a student gets a visa refusal based on documents that we didn't approve. That kind of thing, we can't allow refunds, or it's certainly at the discretion of our Deputy Director International. With regards to interviews, so once the deposit has been paid, our CAS team or our our global success team will send you or the student a checklist of what they need to do, and there'll also be a link to book an interview. Now, this year or this intake for students who have got things like IELTS, PTE, kind of bona fide English language qualifications, we haven't been interviewing students from India. For those who have, been given an offer based on their standard 12 English, we still do need to interview them. That's for our own auditing purposes. So this is kind of, like I said, it is an internal check with our team, basically to ensure that students are genuine and credible. And just to give an idea what to expect, there is a link here, which again, you'll be able to see in the presentation when I send it to you. There's just things like asking what they know about their course, why they've chosen LSBU, have they thought about their accommodation, and that kind of thing. It's, if a student knows kind of what they're studying, what they're doing, it is a really, really straightforward interview. I've had interviews that actually only take about 5 minutes because the student knows everything, they're really hot on it. I've also had interviews that taken half an hour because the student either has no idea what their actual subject, what they're going to be studying, or being blunt, their level of English is not of a level needed to study the course. We use Skype. Unfortunately, we're not able to use any other platform. We just use Skype because the recording software we need for it is purely for Skype. It should last Like I said, it should last about 20 minutes. I've done ones that last about 5 minutes because, I've had some brilliant answers, so we were able to move through really quickly. Some take a bit longer. It just depends on the student. And obviously, it's a good chance for the student to ask us lots of questions. So again, depends how talkative the students are as well. In terms of documents, so I kind of wrote this very briefly, very quickly this morning for India specifically. There's obviously the immigration information form, which there's a link to that there. That needs to be submitted. And then for India specifically, you need the bank statement or a loan letter or a bank letter. Or you could have a bank statement and bank letter. That's fine. As long as we can see that the money has been kept for 28 days and we can see that it's Indian rupees, then, we're pretty happy. There's also a medical certificate for tuberculosis test. And then if the student is using a parent's bank statements or bank letter, or the parent is taking out a loan, then we have we need to see the birth certificate translated and original. I know some birth certificates kind of have both English and Hindi. And then there's also a parental consent letter, so a letter from the parents stating that they're happy for the student to be spending their money, essentially. If you send incorrect documents, that can delay the process, because like I say, it can take a few days for the CAS team to get to your documents. And then if we look at it and it's wrong, we then send an email back, you send the correct document, and then another few days it delays it by. So do double check all the documents and make sure that they are correct, because deadlines are in place, and we try to be flexible with them, but we can't always. So please don't ever assume that we will just extend the deadline by a day or so because someone's a bit late with their bank statement. We can't do that. Okay, so there are other visa application documents as well. The one key one is ATAS. So that's the Academic Technology Approval Scheme. It's only for postgraduate students, and it's only specific courses related to engineering. So predominantly things like mechanical and petroleum engineering, a student needs to get an ATAS certificate. Now that ATAS certificate needs to be gotten during the pre-CAS process. So it's not something that we will issue a CAS letter and then you go get your ATAS certificate. We need to see the ATAS certificate before we issue a CAS. And ATAS certificates can take a few weeks to come out or to be sent to you. So again, do plan that in advance. There's also the immigration health surcharge. I'll be honest, this isn't actually my presentation, so I'm not entirely sure why that's there. You don't need that as part of the pre-CAS process, but that is certainly something that when you're going to get your visa, that is something that you do need to think about purchasing, so that when you're in the UK or when the students are in the UK, their health is covered, their NHS cover is in place, so that they can be seen to free of charge. So after the CAS request, so obviously we assess the documents and approve them. It's very difficult for us to look at documents and email back and say, yes, these are good. Our CAS team are so busy, it's very difficult for them to email back and sort of just say, yep, this is fine, it's been approved. If you send a document and you don't hear from us for a very long time, assume it's been approved. We will only get back to you if the document is wrong. There's then obviously they have the interview if they qualify for it. Then there's the CAS issue, and then there's the visa appointment. So do allow 2 to 3 working days following the interview for an outcome, because they do double check the pre-CAS interviews as well. So someone will take the interview and then somebody will just look over it and make sure that everyone audits each other to make sure everyone's being fair and equal. So if you do have any further questions relating to the admissions or pre-CAS process or anything in general, you have our contact details. So that's my email at the top there. So like I said, I look after all marketing and recruitment activity in South Asia, West Africa, and international students based in the UK. Then there's Zana's email address, so Zana's the country manager. And then Sandeep is our kind of South India regional officer manager, who's based in Hyderabad. So basically everything sort of south and a little bit north of Hyderabad, that's Sandeep's territory. And then we have our admissions coordinator, Guinea, who you submit applications to. So any queries about admissions or applications or anything you need to chase, then she's your person. Obviously, if you do ever want to contact me directly, then you're more than welcome to. But do CC a member of the India team in, just so they can keep up to date with what's going on as well. I will now open up the floor to questions, if there are any.
Yeah, I already see tons of questions, like interesting ones. So what I'll do is I'll just read out questions to you, and then we can discuss about them. And to the audience, if you have any questions in your control panel, there is a box with Q&A, and you can type in your questions, and we will be able to sort them here on live session. So there is one question that says, what happens if student fails in the interview in the first time? So do we give them second chance, or it depends on like what will be the further process for that?
Okay, so if it is quite clear that the student cannot speak a strong level of English, or their answers are really kind of concerning, then we may not give chance for a second interview. However, if it's that the student makes maybe a couple of mistakes, or their course knowledge isn't fantastic, then we will give a second interview. We certainly, for this intake, we have been giving second interviews for students. And obviously, we will let you know if a second interview is needed. Our CAS team will obviously let you know.
Okay. So, is there accommodation options available for September intake students if they would like to book, like this September?
Sorry, could you repeat that? You broke up a little bit.
So, are there accommodation options available for September intake students who are starting this September, like this month?
Yeah, there should still be accommodation options available for students who want to start in September. Our accommodation is open. Obviously, bear in mind that some students will be quarantining in the accommodation as well, and that's something that the students need to bear in mind when they get to the UK, that they may have to go straight into accommodation and quarantine for 14 days. But yes, accommodation is in place. We've worked really hard to keep our accommodation open.
Okay, so we were talking about the documents that we need to submit the application. So there is one question related to that. It says 2020 pass out students might not get the degree certificate sooner. So in that case, will we accept provisional degree certificate?
What I would do is submit the application. So submit the application, and obviously explain when submitting the application the issue that the student has faced, and we will look into that from there. We haven't kind of made a solid decision based on kind of what we're accepting if a student hasn't had their exams or that kind of thing. We're kind of taking it on a case-by-case basis, looking at what's available to us. So do submit an application, upload all of the documents, and we'll have a look based on what you kind of submit to us. So if there is a provisional certificate, then do submit it to us. If it's just a letter from the college or university, submit it to us, and we'll have a look, and we'll do what we can. We look for, I think there's always this kind of idea that universities look for reasons to reject students. We don't at all. We look for reasons to accept. So that if the student has had this issue where they haven't been able to do their final exam or get their final sort of original certificate, just let us know and submit everything you can. The more information you give us, the more we can do to help.
All right. So the next question is, when will you start taking credibility interview for January 21? And what is the turnaround time to arrange credibility interview and its result? And when students can get CAS after the interview?
Okay.
Very long question.
No, that's fine. We're looking at the CAS Pro, so we can start issuing CASs 3 months before the course starts. So we'll be looking at around the beginning of November, end of October for the pre-CAS process for January to begin. What we will do is, so students will, as soon as a student pays a deposit, and the precast process begins, we will send the student an email saying, these are the documents you need to send us, and here's a link to book an interview. The student can then book their interview. They will have their interview. Obviously, we don't make a decision on the CAS, on issuing a CAS, until we have everything. So that's the interview and all the documents. We won't just, we don't wait for one particular thing. We wait for everything to come at once, and then, well, everything to be in one place, and then we'll make a decision on issuing a CAS. So once all of the documents are in place, normally it takes a few days for them to get to it. So within all documents being submitted and done, you want to normally around 5 or so days before they look at issuing the CAS letter. Obviously, it can be done a bit quicker. So I've been jumping on because they've been really busy to help push things through. I can't guarantee that I'll be doing that for the January intake. But yeah, you'll be looking at around 5 days after all documents have been submitted for the CAS to be issued.
When we say 5 days, it is 5 working days. So do not count Saturdays and Sundays, and also the public holidays in UK. No.
I mean, sometimes our team do work weekends, but obviously they're not contracted to, so it's not something that they have to do. So yeah, always just 5 working days.
Yeah. So there is one question, and it says, what if students do not meet the English language criteria, like they don't have IELTS, which is required? What are the options to them? Are there any pre-masters or foundation programs available that they can opt for? So I think on campus, you can just show the admission email ID probably.
Yes. So for so sorry, you completely broke up during that question. All I heard is foundation admissions.
Okay. So yeah. So the English language criteria, what if the student is not meeting the English criteria, the IELTS criteria? Do we have any foundation or pre-masters program which they can opt for before?
So we have foundation and pre-masters. So you could do a foundation course, which is kind of like a year 0, or you can do international year 1, which then goes into second year of a business course. Then we also have pre-masters as well. But yeah, that would be for on campus. So admissions at oncampus.global. Also, as well, there are other, if they want to retake the exam, if they feel that they were sort of hard done by and they had a bad day in the exam, then they obviously can retake, whether they retake the same one or they look at something different like PTE or TOEFL as well.
Okay. Are there any UG programs available in January 21 intake? So I can definitely send the list of programs open for January 21. Dini actually sends a list of programs every Monday to your admissions email ID that is registered with us. So other than that, I can send out the list to each and every attendee as well. But yes, we do have business programs open in UG. That will be BA Business Management and a couple of more, but not a lot of them.
No. There may be some more courses being added to the list. I can't confirm what they are yet. I think what happens is a lot of, particularly because of obviously given the current situation, a lot of the schools are waiting to see what their September intake is like. And obviously, if it's a bit lower than they expect, they may want to open up some courses for January. So we may not know until the end of this month kind of what those courses are. But certainly all the business undergrad courses are open and active for January, and a couple of smaller ones as well. Yeah.
There is one question. This is not my territory, but I'll still read out. So how can we start working with you as an agent from Bangladesh?
Okay. I will put an email in the, hang on, I'm trying to wait for the chat box. There we go. So Q&A. Hang on, let's have a look.
You can mention in the chat box if you want. I think that will be
easier. I'm just trying to find a question. Agent. Yes. How can we start working with an agent in Bangladesh? Okay. I'm just answering that. Okay, so that's done. Cool. Yeah, I've answered that question.
Okay. All right. So, how many point scores in PT and Duolingo required? So I would say 120 Duolingo for masters and 110 for bachelors. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, that is as far as I'm
I
aware.
think
Yeah.
you are right. I am just bringing it up on my phone just to double check, because Duolingo is one that I always confuse myself with.
There are a lot of tests that we accept now, so it's so for PT.
Yeah, that's.
For PT, we do accept 60 overall for masters and 52 overall for bachelors. I can send out information on the admissions criteria as well. We have this PDF that says that explains about all the English language. And I also have a separate presentation that explains about our schools, about LSDU. This presentation mainly was for admissions not the requirement, but the process and the pre-CAS process. So we haven't covered all these questions in this presentation, but I can send out another presentation in the email, so that is much more easier to understand the criteria and everything.
Yes, so Duolingo, I have it here, I think. At least I did have. There we go. Duolingo. So yeah, Duolingo, yeah, undergraduate is 110, postgraduate is 120. So yes, you were correct. Well done.
So do you accept open boards and distance learning? So I think I can answer that question. That's okay. So we do accept open boards, distance learning, but only if the university that has completed the program from is a UGC approved. And as far as I'm aware, it's like IGNU is the only open distance learning institution that is UGC recognized in India. So all others, I don't think we will be able to accept, but there has to be some credibility to the institution that student has completed the program from, and then we will be able to take that. Yeah. So the next question is, would you take interview for those who have required IELTS score for upcoming January intake?
I know that we haven't done for this September, so I would assume that we won't be doing that for January as well. So for those that have IELTS, we probably won't be interviewing, no.
But this can change as well. It
Absolutely, yeah. The pre-CAS
and
process, the CAS team are completely entitled to change the process as they see fit. We've just done it this year because, again, we're very short-staffed, and obviously the current situation means we want to get things through quickly so that students can get here. Obviously, if things settle down for January, we may bring back interviews for IELTS students, but so far, at the moment, for those who have IELTS, we have not been interviewing. And, I haven't heard that we're bringing those back.
Okay, so there is one question that is, can we submit the application without recommendation letter from college? Colleges are not yet opened and so they don't issue the recommendation letters. So.
Yeah, that's fine. Submit it, and just make it clear when you submit the application that there's an issue in getting the letter because of COVID, and we should be able to waive that.
Okay, so IELTS exemption for students with acceptable grades in their 12th standard, would this still hold good for students who have gap from their last qualification? So when the students
we will still accept that. But obviously, there'll be during the pre-CAS process there will be an interview, and that's where we'll assess kind of their ability.
What will be the mode of teaching for January intake? Will it be face-to-face, online?
If I had a crystal ball, I'd be able to tell you. It all depends on the situation. Obviously, things are starting to kind of get a bit better here. It's difficult to say things will be fully back to normal. I think would be an exaggeration, but we'll certainly look at, if it's possible. If things go back to normal and we're allowed to fully teach, we will. But it's difficult. It's difficult to say at the moment. I think there's still going to be some remote delivery, but I reckon there'll be less subjects in that kind of position.
How many years of education gap is allowed for masters? I think I'll answer that for you. We don't have any limits when we say the education gap, as long as the student is able to justify the gap. Let's say if they have worked somewhere, or they have some medical issues for maybe 6-7 months or a year, and they are able to justify the gap, we are happy to look at the application. And I have seen that we have issued offers as well. So that should be fine. I mean, as long as they are able to justify it.
Yeah.
All right. I think we have, what is the COVID-19 criteria for LSBU? Do students arriving have to compulsory quarantine themselves in LSBU accommodation, or they can quarantine to their decided accommodation?
So if they're on there's a list on our government website that if countries are on that list, students do not need to quarantine. So at the moment, I've got the list here. Okay. So. So I think if you're coming from India, you do, hang on, let me see. Yeah, so I believe Indian students do have to quarantine for 14 days. If you have university accommodation, then you'll be able to quarantine in that. And our accommodation team will make sure that they're putting things in place to make sure the students are looked after, and that, if shopping needs to be done for them or that kind of thing, they're going to try their best to kind of accommodate that. Students have their own private accommodation, they can quarantine there, that's no problem, but yeah, they will be expected to quarantine, and obviously they have to get here in time to quarantine and then before the late enrollment date of the 23rd of October. So providing I think they're here on the 8th so that they can enroll, then yeah, but yes, they will be expected to quarantine. But that will be done wherever it is they live or are living whilst they're with us.
We are running out of time, but we still have, I think, 10 more minutes to answer some questions. So is it possible that you can take credibility interview earlier, as CAS process will start very late? This way we can hold positive students if interviews has been done.
The thing is, we can only start doing the credibility interview once the deposit is paid. If we started doing credibility interviews with all unconditional offer holders, we wouldn't have time to do the precast process, and we simply don't have the staff to do it. So as soon as the deposit is paid, what I would say is the earlier you pay the deposit, the easier it will be to get an interview and submit the precast documents, and the quicker the CAS will be issued. We get students who, as soon as they've paid the deposit, we say, right, okay, it's time to send us your bank statement of the 28 days of funds, and they say, well, what's that? So immediately that means that we know it's going to be another 28 days until we hear from them again. So the earlier that students get prepared, and the earlier that you can prepare the students for what they need to send us, the easier it will be. The most kind of complicated, the most kind of difficult issues that we are dealing with are based on students who have decided to do everything right at the last minute.
Okay. Any news from UK Home Office regarding embassy fee waiver like other countries doing? I don't think so, but I mean,
that's not something. No, there's nothing that I've heard of regarding that. No.
Yeah. Okay. We face problem while recruiting students comparatively to other universities. For example, we pay precast fees £3,500 after interview. Students never know whether his interview is cleared or not. He has asked to send CAS documents without telling him interview result. Okay. I think we have covered this question, but
Yeah, that is something. I mean, that is something that we're working on, and that's something that I've raised with the CAS team. Is that as soon as an interview has been done, it would be good for the students to know that the interview has gone okay, and that's something I've raised with the CAS team, and that is something that they're trying to do, kind of when they get a moment to, is to let students know that it went okay. Obviously, what they're also doing at the moment is they like to look at the documents, they like to look at everything as a whole, but. So, yeah, I mean, if you submit the document, I would submit the documents as early. No, ignore me. Sorry, I was thinking of something else. If you do with the interview, obviously during the interview, the student is okay to ask. At the end of the interview, by all means, ask how they did. The CAS team will kind of give them an idea of if there's anything they need to improve on or anything like that, and from that the student will be able to get an idea of how well they did. But yeah, no, the CAS team is beginning to let students know a bit earlier about the outcome of the interview.
Okay. Spouse cases like application, students can apply with the spouse. Is it allowed at LSB? I think. Definitely.
Yeah, for master's courses, yeah.
Yes, I mean for masters, and do tell us at the time of application, and you have to show sufficient funds at the time of pre-CAS process, and then that should be okay. Just to make it clear that we don't have accommodation options for family on campus, so that is the only difference. Other than that, everything will be pretty much same, and we don't have any issue with the dependent.
Yeah, the pre-CAS process is exactly the same. The only thing that you need to do is you also need to show funds to show living expenses for your spouse as well, or they can do it in their own bank account. But we need to see that they have 1 year's living expenses, because obviously we know that the ideal scenario is that they come to the UK and they'll get a job and they'll be able to work, and that's how they'll kind of survive. But obviously that's not something that's a guaranteed certainty, so we need to see that they have those funds in backup just in case.
Okay, there is one question that says sometimes we had to process for refund even after submitting documents for CAS. Okay. So I think it's not that when you submit all the documents and student takes the interview, we can issue the CAS. Everything has to be up with standard, like kind of as per the guidelines. And the interview has also have to be cleared, and then only we can issue the CAS. I mean, we want to make sure that the chances for your student's visa to get approved is highest. And if we have doubt on that, then we won't issue the CAS. Rather, we will have two options: either to defer or to take the refund, because we don't want the student's visa to get rejected. I mean, we can definitely not guarantee the visa approval or rejection, but it's just a probability looking at the documents that our CAS team makes sure that the chances for getting the visa is highest. How many semesters are there in total, and the duration of each semester for bachelor program?
Okay, so generally, so ignoring COVID and all of that, I mean, the semesters are actually still the same. So normally begins in September, and then obviously there'll be a break. The university normally closes around the 20th of December to make way for the festive holiday, and then students normally come back early January, around like the 5th or the 10th of January. And that's when semester 2 starts. So semester 2 starts in January, and then through to April. And then there is normally another break there over Easter, normally about 2-3 weeks. And then the students come back for what is kind of a third semester. But to be honest, a lot of it will mainly be a few revision lessons for their subject and the exams. And then normally they finish at around the beginning of June. All the exams are kind of done by then. So yes, the main big 2 semesters are January to December, and then September to January, and then January to April / May is around that time. They're the 2 big semesters, and then student breaks up for summer, normally around middle of June, and then they're not required back until the following September to start their next year.
Okay, the next question is, are there any internships available?
Yes. is the simple answer. So for most of our undergraduate courses, there are some kind of internships available. So you do 2 years at LSBU, 1 year working, and then you come back to us for a final year. We're also at postgraduate level within business. Our MSc International Business Management is 1 year of study with 1 year of internship. We're also, hopefully for January, looking at, we've validated all of our other MSc International Accounting and Finance, International Marketing, all of those courses to be 1 year of study and 1 year of internship as well. If you do, if you are interested in the courses, then do have a look on our website, and actually you can see the structure of the courses, and you can see if placement years are available there.
And yes, this MSc International Business Management, that is, I think, the only master's at the moment that we have with 1 year internship option available, and that is open for January intake. So if you have applicants, then definitely get in touch with Ginny, and then we will be able to process those applications if they will be meeting our criteria. I would take the last question before we end the session. So I think the most interesting question, I'm just picking the question because there are still...
you saved yourself the most interesting question.
So yes, I think this is a very important question to answer, that are we taking any more agents from India at the moment? And what do they have to do to work with us?
Okay. The simple answer is it largely depends on location. You know, we have areas in India where we already have quite a lot of representatives, and so obviously we don't want to saturate the market from our perspective, and we also don't want to saturate the market from the agent's perspective. We don't want them to have too much local competition. So we are. Yes is the answer. We are still accepting applications, but it's on a case-by-case basis. Depends on where you recruit students from, where you're based, where you predominantly work, and that kind of thing. So do always drop Zana an email, stating where you work and kind of where your main priorities are, how you feel you could work with us, and kind of how you yourselves work as an agency, and then we can assess that and go from there.
I think before we end the session, I just would like to remind everyone that January intake is a bit tricky because we don't have a lot of time to promote as well as to process the offer letter and the precast documents and things. And then there is very big vacation in December, where almost for a month, like the process is literally slow, is because most of our staff is on holidays. And then everybody, of course, like in India, we save our holidays for Diwali. Definitely they save their holidays for Christmas. So a lot of the staff will be on leave around Christmas. And so I would say from 20th December to 5th or 6th January, the process will be very slow. So try and process applications before that, and also start the precast process before that. So, that saves a lot of your time, and then you don't have to call us every day for an update, because even at that time, we won't have any updates because it's that time of the year. So try to be a bit early this time in January, so that we can complete the whole process beforehand, before the Christmas. But I think, yeah, that is it. Lee, would you want to add anything to that?
No, I think everything you said is really valid. Yeah, we don't have a lot of time this January for this January intake. I think the current situation doesn't help us at all. Normally I would have a last-minute dash out to India to help you guys recruit some students and meet you all face to face. Obviously, unfortunately, that can't happen, so I'm having to do kind of the best I can from here. So if you do need any help, if you do need, if you would like me to show my face in some webinars or anything like that, anything I can do or our team can do to help you get some students in through the doors, let us know, and we'll do what we can.
So I think, yeah, we're very close to ending the session, and I hope you all have enjoyed the informative session. We look forward for hosting this kind of session again in future. If you have any requests, definitely do drop me an email, and we will be able to talk about that. There are still some questions that we were not able to answer, but if you want me to answer those questions and some like that, you can definitely email me at my email ID. It's india@lsbu.ac.uk. And thank you all for participating in this session. Stay tuned for more such webinars and take care. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.